Hello, this is WQC Air Radio with Sarah Saleh. Unit 7 exam, part 3, I guess. The third part being the question, what are the major foreign policy events of the two of the following presidents? Be sure to explain the issues. You can do Truman and Eisenhower, Truman and Kennedy, or Eisenhower and Kennedy, and I definitely chose Eisenhower and Kennedy. So let's see. What I wrote for that was that Mr. Eisenhower brought a new look to the U.S. national security policy in 1953. The main elements of the new look were 1. Maintaining the vitality of the United States economy while still building sufficient strength to prosecute the Cold War. 2. Relying on nuclear weapons to deter communist aggression, or if necessary, to fight a war. And 3. Using the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, to carry out secret or covert actions against the government or leaders directly or indirectly responsive to Soviet control. 4. Strengthening allies and winning the friendship of non-aligned governments. And Eisenhower's defensive policies, which aim to provide more bang for the buck, cut spending on controversial forces while increasing the budget for the Air Force and for nuclear weapons. Even though national security spending remained high, it never fell below 50% of the budget during Eisenhower's presidency. Eisenhower did balance 3 of the 8 federal budgets while he was in the White House. With this being all summed up, we go to, of course, my second part of this question, which is President Kennedy. The foreign policy of the John F. Kennedy administration in 1961 and in 1963, to 1963 you could say, saw diplomatic and military initiatives in Europe, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and other regions amid considerable Cold War tensions. Kennedy deployed a new generation of foreign policy experts dubbed the best and the brightest. Several of them were from the foreign policy think tanks. Kennedy had, the think tanks, let's go back to that. What was the think tanks? To be specific, the think tanks are an organization that performs research and advocacy concerning topics such as social policy, political strategy, economics, military technology, and culture. Most policy institutes are non-profit organizations which some countries, such as the United States and Canada, provide with tax-exempt status. Of course, going back to Kennedy had been interested in the issue of war and peace since his youth. In his inaugural address, Kennedy encapsulated his Cold War stance as following: "Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate," a famous saying by, of course, John F. Kennedy. Kennedy's strategy of flexible response, managed by Robert McNamara, who was, at the time, sorry about that, dropped something. He was born June 9th on 1916, and July 6, 2009 was his death. He was an American business executive in the 8th Secretary of Defense, serving under President John F. Kennedy and President Lyndon B. Johnson from 1961 to 1968, during which time he played a large role in escalating the United States' involvement with the Vietnam War. Following that, he served as the president of the World Bank from 1968 to 1981. McNamara was responsible for the institution of systems analysis in public policy, which developed into the discipline known today as policy analysis. McNamara consolidated intelligence and logistics functions of the Pentagon into two centralized agencies, the Defense Intelligence Agency and Defense Supply Agency. That was a little bit about Robert McNamara, whatever. And, of course, back once again to the Kennedy administration. Managed by Robert McNamara, was aimed to reduce the possibility of war by miscalculation. Kennedy's administration contributed to the peaceful resolution of the Cuban Missile Crisis, refraining from further escalation of the 1961 Berlin Crisis. In 1961, Kennedy initiated the creation of the Peace Corps, Arms Control Disarmament Agency, and Alliance for Progress. On October 7, 1963, he signed the Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which was accepted by the Soviet Union and the United Kingdom. And that was part 3 of the exam. We still have 3 more parts to go. I hope Mr. Khan gave me 15 more minutes.